welcome to the red half of Sheffield in the middle of my summer break. I didn't think I'd have to do one of these. No, we're not doing a match preview. No, I can assure you football for the next 20, 30 minutes might be the closest it's been to my mind for like the last 4 weeks. Unfortunately, I was hoping to get through the entire summer and then switch back into football. But we are obviously here because the departure of Chris Wilder and the appointment of Rubin Selles from the Hull in Back pod. I am joined by Ann to talk about Selles's tenure at Hull and what we can expect as Blades fans to from the manager going into this upcoming season. And how are you doing this afternoon?
Yeah. Like as I was saying off air, hay fever's a bit. It's tormenting me at the minute, but other than that, absolutely fine. Yeah. It's been nice warm weather. Been enjoying it. Enjoying my weekend, and like I said, we're just trying to fill the void out. Whilst the football's not on, it's so poor in the off season. It's so boring, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is pretty boring, and I try to turn my mind off, but everybody on the internet wants to be a armchair manager, armchair owner, armchair whatever, saying this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. So Rubin Selles, his tenure at Hull, albeit it was brief one last season, coming in from Reading. Give me kind of sum his tenure up, and at the end of the season when they decided to let him go, were you kind of scratching your head why you let him walk?
So I feel like we never actually got to see the real style of player that Sellers would want to incorporate as through our team, because we had a really, really bad season last season. We had a really poor summer. Did all our transfer business far too late. Hired Tim Volter at the start of the season, who was an absolute car crash, and left us in a horrendous state. I think we were bottom of the league when Sellers took over. So he inherited an absolute car crash, really, and his job was to keep us up, which he did in the end, albeit by goal difference. It was by the skin of our teeth on the last game. But he inherited a squad with literally zero goal scorers in it. We lost in the summer beforehand. We'd lost, I think, 64 of our 68 goals that we'd scored the season before, and brought very, very little in. We brought, obviously, the aging João Pedro in, Mason Bester, who'd scored, I think, 2 the season before. Wingers like Abu Kamara had only played at League One level. Bellumi from abroad. Liam Miller, who had a decent season for Preston the season before, but they both went out with ACL injuries, so we lost them for the full season. Then in January, when Sellers had come in himself and sort of steadied the ship a bit, we were seeing improved results. We brought in the likes of Elliot Matazo from Monaco, who'd played Champions League games at the start of that season as well, and he was absolutely brilliant, especially that Sunderland away game. Likes of Louis Barry, who had absolutely lit up League One for the first 6 months of the season. We brought in players that we thought would make genuine differences, and obviously, as luck would go, we lost both of them to injury as well. So he was, the way I would describe it is, he was trying to race a Fiat 500 around a NASCAR track. It was, we had zero firepower, so we had to do what he could, and that was make us hard to beat. We became defensively solid. I mean, if you look at our results from last season, we very, very rarely lost by more than 2 goals. Yeah. It was always 1 or 2 goals in it. The only time we got hammered really was Norwich away under Volter. But we were always in games. We could just never score goals. If we had a proper goal scorer, we'd probably earn, 10, 15 more points and be nowhere near the bottom 3. So he did very well, given the circumstances, I would say. I was in the camp that it was a very harsh sacking. It's very, very split, the decision through our fan base. Half can half are behind it and say that we didn't really get any entertainment in it, and we should have secured safety a lot sooner than we did. But given the circumstances, I thought he did a really good job, and I think ultimately the manager's gone down the route that he usually does, where he quotes style of play and all this kind of thing. But I think realistically, you could have brought any manager into this situation that we had last season, and they would have struggled. So I thought he did really well given the circumstances, and that it was really harsh. So I am quite surprised he got a job like Sheffield United. I think it might be a bit too soon for him. But in saying that, when you look at the logic and what he's achieved already as a young manager, Reading had financial difficulties, couldn't sign anybody, and he had them in the top 6, basically utilising their youth academy. He came to us, stabilised the club, kept us in the division. I think the 2 permanent jobs that he's had, if you exclude obviously his caretaker stint at Southampton, he's basically achieved his targets. So, why not? Why can't he have a go with a team that's got a squad of players that are significantly better than what we had last season? And you guys have got attacking talent coming out your ears, so you might see a better version of Selles ball than what we saw. So I think you've got reason to be optimistic there.
Yeah, that was my biggest, he's, as you mentioned, his tenure at Reading, and then his abbreviated spell at Hull. He has done everything he has came in to do. I think he is a championship manager at the end of the day. I think he was highly better than League One. I think when, because when even Reading hired him to start last season, it was just kind of like he goes from managing Southampton in their season in the Premier League to all the way down to League One. I was like, it's quite a drop. I mean, maybe something is a bit curious of why he dropped, but then he, as you mentioned, had them in the playoffs and then came to Hull. It sounds like he battled an uphill battle for his tenure in there. Obviously, coming to Sheffield United, this is no shot at Hull, but he's going to have, which I believe you might have a little bit deeper pocket, so he can go get players that like to play his formation, and we don't have to rely on, maybe a few go out the door that were Wilder, brought in thinking he could mold them into something. But I'm curious, once the transfer, they green light the transfer windows and him to start inquiring about players. I'm curious to see who he brings in, and plays his type of game. What formation was Hull playing under Selles?
So we mainly played. It's like a variant of 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1, whichever version you want to call it. Basically, they're the same thing. We utilised the back 4. We'd have 2 that were slightly deeper, 1 slightly more advanced, and then you had your 2 wide players and your solo striker. So that's the kind of formation that we've played last few years. Whatever manager comes in, that tends to be the formation we play. Apparently at Reading, he played similar. It was like a 4-3-3 variant. Obviously, he likes his wingers to cut inside, and the midfielders to have a lot of the ball, especially to try and find those pockets of space in that like number 10 position. When we spoke to Reading fans, they said he did try a couple of other formations and never really worked. So he might be tempted to tinker a little bit and try some other systems with the quality player that Sheffield United have got. But we didn't really have that sort of possibility because we had a very, very, very small squad and not a lot of quality in it last season. So I think his hands were tied in what we could do last year. But he wasn't afraid to play players in, if he deems them versatile enough to play them in different positions across the pitch to see if they can contribute in a different way. Gallart for us was a big part of the success that we found in the second half of the season under Selles, and that's because he sort of summarises what Selles wants from teams, and that's to work hard, track back, defend, contribute in all aspects of the game. And this is a word you'll hear from him a lot, especially in post-match interviews, and being competitive. That's really what he values, and you're probably going to see signings that are based on that, signings that players that are going to run themselves into the ground for the shirt rather than be a bit more, what you might have seen in the last few years as a Sheffield United fan. You're more flary players and stuff being in the Premier League and stuff. You're gonna go back to a hard working, being hard to beat and earning your chances kind of style. So yeah, I would probably say it was a 4-3-3. Wingers tracking back, helping and defending. He does want to try and play forwards as quick as he can, but like I say, he's in terms of our squad last season, it wasn't the best. So we tried to do that at times, but would have to more play a counter-attack kind of style. But I can imagine at Sheffield United, you guys will be on the front foot a bit more, and he'll be getting you the ball as direct as possible into the box.
And you can look at if Sheffield United fans are gonna look back at a game that kind of started to show some cracks, it was the absolute hammering Hull gave at Bramall Lane when they came and beat us 3-0, beat us like an absolute drum. That was probably, I don't know if I'm speaking for you, Ann, but probably Hull's best game of the season. I think we were
Yeah,
top
it
or
definitely
near,
was. Yeah.
second during when you came to Bramall Lane, just absolutely turned us over. We didn't have a chance in hell. So, if United fans need something to draw back on, just put that Hull game in the VCR, rewind it, and hit play on the old VHS tape and watch how clinical they looked with. And this is no jab at Hull, but just what should have been on paper a weaker side than the Sheffield United side that had been rolled out. So there might be a little bit of encouragement in Sheffield United land. Before I wrap this one up, how did Selles get on with the supporters? Was he the one who's banging on his chest, or he just, or did he word salad something and say what the fans wanted to have, or did he just open it cut and dry and say, "Here's what it is. We're shit. I'm trying to make us better, but I'm only managing with the cards I am dealt. I'm not a miracle worker, but I hope to keep us up." How does he interact with?
Yeah, no, I'd say that throughout the time that he was our manager, I thought he got on with the fans quite well. He never once called the fans out for anything, which was the polar opposite to with what we had with Tim Volta when he started. He basically went to war with the fans. But Sellers is a nice guy, and the entire fan base were behind him from minute one all the way till the last game. And you only have to look at the scenes on the last day of the season. We how the fans took to him when he came to the side of the pitch and stuff. We did have a good relationship with Sellers. I think the one thing that people will probably name as a frustration of theirs when it came to him is obviously after really bad displays. I mean, Derby at home towards the end of the season, where if we'd have won, we'd have secured survival. We played really poorly, lost 1-0, and he didn't make subs till like the 88th minute or something like that. That is one of his weaknesses, I think, is substitutions. He sometimes does wrong players or wrong times. That's something that he has to work on for me. But he would come out, and rather than sort of take accountability for that, he speaks about, we could all see we were really, really bad in that game. And rather than say that, he would say something like, I thought in every aspect of the pitch, we were really competitive. We did well in this sense. And you were like, well, what's your version of competitive? Because if you mean in terms of physicality, then yeah, we probably were. But in terms of creating chances and trying to win the game, we definitely wasn't. So I think he's the kind of manager who wants to take the heat away from the players in terms like, some managers will quite easily throw players under the bus and say that wasn't good enough. I think he's the kind of manager who wants to sort of take the brunt of it and save his players from that, which you can respect. And as a fan, it's sometimes a little bit frustrating to not have the accountability, but you can see it, when you take a step back and see that he's just protecting his players. He's making sure that, he takes that focus away from them so they can remain focused on what they need to do in the next game. You can kind of appreciate that. So, no, you'll get along with him. You'll love him. He's got like the two assistants that he has with him. They do like you might not have seen it before, but he like rotates the three of them. So rather than have one manager stood on the side, like they'll do it in like 10-minute stints. So like Ruben will be there for 10 minutes and the next guy will be there for 10 minutes. And I think it's because the three of them see the game differently and they might pick up on something different. And it's quite strange, that sort of rotation system you see on the side. So that'll be an interesting thing to notice when you're watching games and stuff. But no, I think you guys will love him and I hope he does well. Obviously not in the two games that he has against us. But no, I think he's a manager who is at some point destined to be, a Premier League manager in the future, and it'll be interesting to see how he does. A squad with much higher attacking talent than what we had, because I do think that you guys are going to see the version of Sellers that we thought we'd get had we had this same caliber of player.
Yeah. I'm inclined to agree with you on that. Hopefully we don't get rid of too many of our key players to wandering eyes from the leagues above and leagues in Europe to kind of hamper us. Yeah, before we get out of here, and tell the people where they can find the podcast, because I'm sure for the 2 match days, as long as they don't fall in the midweek, I will have you back on next season to preview the matches. So tell the people where they can find the podcast.
Yeah, so I'd imagine we're probably similar to you guys. You can find us on YouTube if you just search Hull and Back Podcast. Make sure you put podcast in at the end on YouTube, otherwise you'll get Only Fools and Horses episode to Hull and Back. So you got to differentiate that one. But then you can also find us obviously on your usual audio providers like your Apple Music, your Spotify's, your Podchasers, whatever it is you get us on. Any listens, subscribes, anything like that, appreciated. Yeah, and thanks for having me on, mate.
Yeah. Cheers as always. I'm gonna go back to enjoying my summer. You do the same thing, and in probably time of recording, today is the 22nd of June. Players return in about 10 days, something like that.
Yeah.
And then it starts all over again, and the slog of the UFL Championship begins once again. So soak it up. People, enjoy your summer. Go outside, enjoy the weather, and I will catch you at a later date this summer. But until then, I will leave you with Up the Blades.